the final X-Men movie to take place, well not take place, to be owned and distributed by 20th Century Fox, because this movie was made right before, well, sometime before, they had sold the rights to these characters to Disney. This is a movie that has been in production hell, development hell, for really the last 3 years, I want to say. I remember this movie was in, I think, post-production sometime in 2017. It was meant to come out sometime in 2018, but the movie got delayed initially, then it got delayed again, and then COVID happened, and now it's finally been released, and in theaters, I might add. So yeah. Really felt good to be back there. In this movie you have this group of 5 mutants. They're these teenagers. They've all got these powers, these very intense powers that they don't know how to control. They're at this hospital run by this doctor, and they are told at this hospital that they're here to learn to control their powers so that they can, you know, be in the world, maybe eventually even become X-Men. What we don't realize, however, and what these characters eventually realize, is there's a lot of creepy House of Horror shit in this hospital, and they quickly realize they are in fact not here to get better. Now the X-Men movies have been a little bit hit and miss recently. I mean, the X-Men movies have been very hit and miss recently. I mean, the last 2 we got, you had Logan, which I think is one of the greatest comic book movies that has ever been made. And then, a few years ago, actually it was last year, we got Dark Phoenix, which was meant to be the conclusion to Fox's X-Men movies. And that movie was really just it was so terrible. Like, you want to find a way to just say fuck you to the fans and fuck you to your franchise? That's how you do it. I think that's all the more reason I was a little more interested in seeing the New Mutants, because now the New Mutants has finally been released, I was hoping in my mind, maybe now Fox will get a better send-off for their X-Men franchise than what they left us with. I will say this, even though it will not be saying much, but this movie's a whole lot better than Dark Phoenix. I mean, way better. First of all, the actors in this movie, they all do a really good job. I really bought into all the characters they play. And they've got some solid star power in this movie. You have Anya Taylor-Joy, you have Maisie Williams, you have Charlie Heaton. And it's always interesting seeing characters when they initially have their powers or don't know how to control their powers. It kind of reminds me a little bit, initially, you get kind of an X-Men First Class kind of feel, you know, when all the mutants are in the mansion and, you know, Magneto and Professor X are teaching them all how to control their powers, how to use them. I think seeing characters be overwhelmed by the abilities they have because they've never experienced this before, or they don't know exactly how to control them, or they don't know in their heart that they can be useful. They may see themselves as just dangerous because of the damages they may have caused. And that's where I will really give this movie a lot of credit. This movie's not really trying to be your stereotypical big-scale superhero movie with a bunch of action and a bunch of really cool imagery or visuals or anything like that. This movie's a lot more grounded. It's meant to be more of a character piece. It wants us to learn more about these characters. It wants us to learn about their pain and what they're going through and their growth. I feel like this was especially the case with the characters Wolfsbane, Moonstar, and Cannonball. You really learn a lot more about their past. You really learn more about what it is they've been dealing with and what they come from, what their powers are. But I will say, what I didn't appreciate necessarily with the movie is I feel like it might have focused a little too much on those 3. You have 2 other characters in this movie. You have Magic and Sunspot, and I don't think either of them got as much limelight as the other 3, or as much focus. I think part of what that was is both those characters, especially Magic, well, they're assholes. They're not nice people. They make life a lot tougher on everyone, especially Moonstar because she's the newest one in the group. So I guess the movie was going for, it's like, well, these guys are assholes anyway, so maybe they won't want to learn that much about them. You hear a little bit about each of their backstories. I mean, you understand why they're both here, but at the same time, when you see them, I'm just like, I still would have liked to have seen more of whatever it was you dealt with, what your family was like, what your home life was like, what was it that brought you here. It's like, I'd like to see the damage in you. It's like, because some people have a different way of dealing with damage. Some people are affected by a tragedy in their life and it kind of turns them into an asshole. Some people just grieve, but they press forward with it. I would have liked to have seen more of what made them what they were. I also appreciated Cecilia Reyes, the doctor, who's played by Alice Braga. She is basically the mentor of this group. What I liked seeing in her is she's ultimately the voice of the outside world. She's obviously terrified of these mutants. She is terrified of what they're capable of doing. And whoever it is that's giving her these orders to do what it is she needs to do, she is following them completely, willingly, and blindly because she is so afraid of what these things are capable of doing. I also like that this movie didn't rely too heavily on references to previous X-Men movies. This movie wanted to stand on its own as its own X-Men movie. But I will say they do have a few Easter eggs, notably for one movie in particular, and I will say, when you see the Easter egg, a lot of what's happening towards the plot of this movie is going to make a lot more sense. Like, you'll see it, and you'll be like, oh, I recognize that in particular. Now all this makes sense. Now I understand what is the true motive in this movie. If there's another criticism I need to have for this movie, it is the horror element, because one thing that I heard was one of the reasons it was initially delayed was because the studio wanted to make it scarier. They wanted to do some reshoots for the movie to make it more scary. They wanted to make this, first and foremost, a horror movie that existed in the comic book movie world. I gotta be real, does the movie have some creepy scenes in it? Yeah, it has a couple, but really, this movie's not... It's not scary. I mean, I know how much of a wimp I am. I know how much I generally can't handle horror movies. And the fact that I walked out of that movie and I was like, wasn't that scary? It wasn't even really that disturbing. I mean, I didn't really feel too unsettled by it. It has me wondering in my head, it's like, if you felt you had to go back and reshoot it to make it scarier, what was it you had before you did that? Because my guess is at that point, it wasn't even remotely frightening. Part of me is maybe wondering they just wanted to finally get it out there. My guess is Fox was also facing some kind of a deadline to get this movie out there before Disney just completely took the rights from it. They probably wanted to just squeeze this out, so they were just like, we need to finally get this movie released. And now that COVID-19 restrictions aren't quite as bad as they once were, they were like, we gotta get this into the theaters, we need people to see it, forget making it horrifying, we just need it to get released. And all in all, that's really what I'll say. The New Mutants, it's not bad. You have a really solid cast. I really got invested with at least a few of the New Mutants in this movie. I appreciated the movie being more of a character piece. I appreciated it being more grounded than a lot of the superhero movies we have gotten recently. I do wish some characters got a bit more of a time to shine. I also wish if they were going for more of a horror superhero movie that, well, it was a little bit scarier. I'll never fully understand why a movie like this took so long to get released. I mean, it's not like it was that difficult of a movie to make. But in the end, I appreciated the New Mutants for what it was. I think it's a at least much better send-off for Fox's X-Men than, you know, Dark Phoenix was. And I will say this much, if Disney wants to continue a story with these characters, I'd be interested in seeing that. I don't know if they will, but if they do, I'd be on board with it. That's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.